here it goes.
16, 15, 14, 13. Have you ever noticed that this timer, it goes a little bit faster than actual seconds? Now
It
you'll
really
notice
does.
every time.
It really has a mind of its own. It doesn't care. Oh, I should not be in the frame. As per you, I do not. What's happening?
Welcome, one and all, to a very spooky episode of
What is it?
Nobody Asked with Maria, spooky last name,
I'm a ghost.
and me. I'll be guiding you through today's most frightening topics, including nuanced arguments about a legitimately difficult topic, abortion.
I don't know what to do. Okay.
Oh man, that was pretty fun. I just started the laugh, and I realized how close I was to like a good, evil, spooky laugh. I was like, I was knocking on the door of it, so I thought, let's follow this thread.
Let's
what is
go
life
all the
but
way.
if not a
Let's
series
just-
of open doors?
Sure.
And all that.
If you don't,
Yeah.
might as well just kick them all the way open. Why not?
For shizzle, as they say. Would you like to introduce our first topic of the day?
Well,
I'm just kidding.
Okay.
I'm joking because we have an ad. We have an advertisement. So, for any of our new listeners, we, unlike all other podcasts, we have people pay to advertise their products on this show. It's because of our immense viewership and viewers like you. And so, we just ask that if you're watching, that you go to whatever website tells you to go to and type in whatever and spend all of your hard-earned money on whatever nonsense product. And today's nonsense product is Crest.
Ooh.
Crest toothpaste. Crest toothpaste, especially ultra white, is recommended by 9 out of 10 dentists. 9 out of 10 dentists to be used on you and your family to preserve your teeth health. And Crest reached out to me to tell you a little bit about that 10th dentist. So
That's what I wanted to know.
So yeah, exactly. Well,
What's
because isn't that always the question? And they did a little digging. I don't know if you've heard about Crest, but they've got money. They're no Colgate, but they've got money. They did a little digging on this 10th dentist because they were like, "Why do you have it out for Crest whitening?" And they found out that 10th dentist believes OJ is innocent, or at least they did believe that when he was still a running back in the NFL. They also think that Bill Cosby was wrongly convicted, and they believe in the judicial system. Now, this was, their evidence for that is just that they like the Cosby Show on their Facebook, but that seems like
Also, pudding pops.
yeah, and they like pudding pops. Thanks for, I forgot that part, and then. And then lastly, they support Vladimir Putin and Russia, which is pretty bad. And their evidence is, believe me, I'm paying you. The 10th dentist. So really, 9 out of 9 reasonable dentists recommend Crest. And so that's what you should buy. Use discount code Nobody Asked 2123 at checkout for 0% discount. And for a little thing will come up that says this discount code does not exist.
Yep.
They also don't have their own storefront.
So good luck.
I'm going too far down this.
The level of, yeah. No, but I see what you were doing there. What are we really talking about?
Oh, jeez, I just spilled Coke on my fucking bedspread. Hello, could I get a towel on aisle 3? That was to my girlfriend and not to the viewers. So today we're gonna talk about an abortion. We're gonna talk about a topic that
This is going on without a hitch today.
Hello and welcome to Nobody Asked with Maria and me. I'm her son. Today I'll be really quickly introducing the first topic, and the first topic is one that we've been discussing for a few episodes now. It's abortion, but we've been talking about it with our own biases and basically patting ourselves on the back the whole time for being completely right 100% of the time. And we wanted to just say, even though we are right, that the topic of abortion is difficult. And to say otherwise is pretty disingenuous. We want to talk about that. And one of the big complaints that I have about all of the discourse that's been going on ever since this leaked opinion from the Supreme Court is the fact that it does not seem legitimately. It doesn't seem like anyone is arguing in order to convince people with the other opinion. It's actually kind of funny, right? Because everyone's phrasing the things that they say like they're an argument, right? Like they're being convincing. But I'm beginning to detect that content creators that are talking about this are more about getting applause from their own side and convincing their own side that they're already right, which is pretty easy because everyone already agrees with them.
Sure.
Then they are actually about kind of figuring out why people take a different opinion, which is legitimate, and figuring out what is the best way of actually getting at the overall problem. And so I think a good jumping off point here is an argument that was put out by a philosopher in a book called After Roe. And the After Roe argument is one of those rare abortion arguments that actually steelmans the other side's opinion. So steelmanning is, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek opposite of a straw man, right? A lot of people get shit for claiming that their opponent's arguments are a completely different thing than they are and making a weaker argument for their opponents and then attacking that, which is just, it's disingenuous arguing. Steelman is to do the opposite, basically. Steelman is to
strengthen their argument? You want to
it's to argue against the best version of another side's argument, right? Is to attempt to argue against what you believe would be the most legitimate reason for somebody to take the opposing opinion, and then argue against that. And it's a much more legitimate way of arguing. And if you're actually arguing with somebody of the opposite opinion, it has the effect of making them feel heard. Because if you straw man the whole time, obviously part of what that entails is just, casting out the parts of somebody's argument that are legitimate, and then only taking, you say that you're pro-life, but you're against the death penalty. And it's like, oh, semantics. Great point. You say that you're pro-life. You say you're pro-choice, but you want to decide for me to take the vaccine. Shut the fuck up. So, what I want to do.
But those are both interesting points, right? But it's nuanced, right? We like to think that everything is very simple and easy, like the idea if you're pro-life, then you should care about all life. But there is a distinction in the same way that vaccines and caring about body autonomy could be different than body autonomy with abortion. Are they the same thing? Maybe, but also maybe not. I don't know.
So this is why I think this is going to be a fun episode, because I'm going to take the opposite. I don't find it interesting at all, because it's not arguing. It's not arguing against the opposing side's opinion. It's saying, you called your opinion something, and I'm going to argue against what you called the opinion. You'll notice that this is something that people do a lot with Black Lives Matter and with All Lives Matter, right? Is they start arguing based upon what the thing is named and not what it actually represents, right? Pro-life is the name for it's a very political name for people that do not believe that abortion is a constitutional right, and they don't believe that abortion is a morally right thing to do. They don't believe it should be legal. That's the best way I could put that opinion. Pro-life is not really, well, a bunch of people that are just going out there going, I just love life. And to say that that's what the opinion is straw manning what pro-life is, because it's actually an abortion argument. Pro-choice is not, I think everyone should be able to choose whatever they do all the time with no nuance at all. That's not what pro-choice is. It's about the ability to choose whether or not you get an abortion. So when you start bringing up vaccines, it's like, uh-oh, you're not arguing the same debate anymore. You just took the name for the thing and are arguing against the name. That's dumb. You're not arguing in good faith if you're doing that. And so this is what I want to get away from, is when we have these debates, us patting ourselves on the back for arguing against something that people don't actually say. It drives me nuts.
No, I mean, listen, while I do see that those things are connected to each other, I see how they would not help in terms of changing somebody's mind. Going and taking this side tangent about the vaccine does not really help get that person to the same place that you want them with pro-life or being pro-choice, because it's not the same argument in their mind. They're talking about, to them, it's all murder, right? It's all murder. It's a life. This is about murder. So it's not the same thing as their body autonomy. They view very differently about what they put in their body. But see, that's my problem, is the body autonomy thing is the argument for both ways of thinking. So that's how they connect.
Yeah. It's funny because they connect in that way. But I just want viewers that might engage in the, you are pro-life yet you're okay with the death penalty. I want those viewers to think for a second, just from the perspective of someone that thinks that abortion is killing a baby, right? And then I want you to insert their own thinking into what you've said and hear how ridiculously stupid this argument sounds, okay? Hear me out, right?
Okay.
Somebody that's okay with the death penalty. You're saying to them, oh, wait, you're okay with killing a murderer or a rapist, but you're not okay with killing a baby? Doesn't that sound stupid to you? Is that not the dumbest thing you've ever heard? What? Yeah, because the kid didn't murder anyone, and he's a kid. So if the person that's pro-life thinks that at whatever stage that they think it's at, that a fetus has established personhood, then yeah, that argument is going to sound nuts. No. I agree. I don't think that there's any pro-life viewers on here, which is why I want to talk about this in a way that's like, if you want to convince pro-lifers that there's a middle ground and that there's a better way to do things than just outright banning abortion, or that banning abortion is a constitutional right, whatever you want to convince them of, you can't convince them with the dumbest arguments on the planet. And that is what that sounds like to me, because you have to understand what's going through their head. And you're saying you're okay with killing criminals, but you're not okay with killing kids. Sounds stupid when you think about it from their perspective.
Okay.
But as soon as you acknowledge that there are good arguments, then I think we can go somewhere. So that's a good example, I think, of kind of my issue with some of these arguments. And these arguments, I'm absolutely positive, having said that argument, that all of us, if we're as chronically online as I am on, have seen that argument with 100,000 likes on TikTok 20,000 times, because it's an argument that's made for people that are already pro-choice, which are bad arguments. Start making arguments for convincing people. And that is why we want to talk about the McFall versus Shimp finding. It was a Pennsylvania finding, and it was at the start, there's going to be there's no abortion analogy here. And I'll just throw out there, I don't think that this is a perfect anti-pro-life. I've gotten caught up in my own words. I don't think it's a perfect argument, but I think it's the first one of the arguments that I think legitimately starts from, okay, let's say that the baby is a person. I'm not giving up that fact. I'm not saying that the fetus has gained personhood, right? But for the sake of argument, let's say it's a person. I still think abortion should be allowed. And that is what the McFall versus Shimp trial is about. Do you want to kind of take away the trial itself?
I will tell you about it. So it happened about 5 years after the Roe v. Wade case happened. And again, you are right. It is not about abortion. So McFall was a 39-year-old asbestos worker, and he had a bone marrow disease. And he started kind of soliciting family members to see if somebody would be a bone marrow match for him. His first cousin, David Shimp, who was 43, he had a high bone marrow compatibility with him, but he didn't do the final level of testing necessary to find out if he was a perfect match. His wife kind of was concerned and was like, nah, man, we don't need to, you don't know him, your bone marrow, basically. I feel uncomfortable with how this is going to affect your life. She was like, nah. And so McFall, who wanted the bone marrow, he sought an injunction to force Shimp to submit to a bone marrow transplant. So this is just assuming already that he's a perfect match. I want your bone marrow. Give it to me. And what the judge ended up ruling is Judge John Flaherty. He said, while refusal is morally indefensible, that's what he said. He said, refusing to give your bone marrow is indefensible when this is really the only medical option out there for him. The court would not force him to subject himself to a transplant. In order to save the life of one, may society infringe upon one's absolute right to bodily security. The U.S. and its courts must respect the individual's body autonomy. So that's the first time you really hear about bodily autonomy was with this case, is that government is not going to force you to go through a medical procedure to help somebody else. Mm-hmm. For our laws to compel defendant to submit to an intrusion of our body would change every concept and principle upon which our society is founded. To do so would defeat the sanctity of the individual and would impose a rule which would know no limits. One could not imagine where the line would be drawn. And I think that's the big fear right now, right? Is if this Roe v. Wade thing goes away and abortion is no longer an option, where does it stop? Mm-hmm. It's a fair question. Will we lose birth control? Will Plan B go? I mean, because there's some people that believe the second that an egg is fertilized, then it is a person, even though it hasn't necessarily implanted yet anywhere to become a viable pregnancy. It doesn't matter. Some people view it's already a life. So that would throw Plan B out the window for people. Mm-hmm. Contraception could be thrown out the window, depending on how far you want to let that ball roll. When you start imposing rules like that and you lose your bodily autonomy, what's going to happen? Where's the limits?
Absolutely. Yep.
So basically, McFall's right to life could not force Shimp to subject himself to bodily intrusion. So, Sorry, McFall, that you're going to die because you have bone marrow disease. That is not Shimp's responsibility to save you. It's interesting.
It's interesting, and one of the things that I like that the judge says is that this idea, even though I think it's so funny that the judge is like, I'm just going to throw it out there that this is morally indefensible, which is not really the judge's job in this finding, for him to like put his own idea of what morally Shimp should have done, right? Mm-hmm. But the essential argument is that for a society to consist of individual, independent people, the right to bodily autonomy needs to be protected, even in cases where the decision that one, makes with their bodily autonomy is morally indefensible. We see this in another case, right? Which is even when somebody's speech is morally indefensible, the right to speech is so inherent to the kind of society we're attempting to construct, that we cannot start introducing measures that decrease the how much free speech is allowed. So people need to be allowed to say that they're Nazis in America is the way that we've gotten. Even though being a Nazi is morally indefensible, for a society like ours to exist, we must protect, even in the cases where it's morally indefensible. And so an individual cannot be expected to expend their own, forced to give up some part of their body for somebody else, even to preserve their right to life, which is interesting. And this case has oft been referenced as an argument, which is here's a rare argument where the pro-choice side says, let's even take that the fetus is a person with rights, right? Let's say it's gotten to that point, and let's say that we're giving that up, which we're not, but let's say that you're right about it being a person. An individual, independent entity within the United States that has citizenship and has free will cannot be required to give up their body. And in the case of a fetus, a woman cannot be required to gestate a child by the state, is the argument that is brought up in this case. Doesn't that sound so much better as an argument against pro-life than these pat yourself on the back nonsense arguments? It's juicier.
I get where you're going with it. I get how it's saying, and we could have made this very same debate during COVID, right? They're saying, hey man, you being alive has nothing to do with me. I don't owe you an intrusion into my body with a vaccine so that you can be alive, people that are immune compromised or whatever your situation is. You are not my problem. Like, this law basically says that too, if you wanted to. But
it's not a law, just for the record.
You're right. It's
actually not even, it's not even federal. It's a state ruling, but it's a state ruling that's often referenced in other rulings. It's a, precedent and whatnot. Interestingly, excuse me again, I'm just burp central right now. Interestingly, on the vaccine point, the Supreme Court has ruled that a government has the right to force you to take a vaccine. So that's interesting.
It is interesting.
It does kind of separate those two things. I will read this comment. Not having a right to life does not give a person the right to use another person's body, even if they need to use that person's body to go on living. Per Shimp versus McFall, same principle then. Exactly. You've wrapped up the whole thought into a single sentence. So that is, I think, one of the best arguments against you don't know they're a person or not. You don't, because
it says they are a person, but it doesn't matter.
It says even if they are a person. Now, just for the sake of steel manning, right? For the sake of trying to take the perspective of a pro-lifer, I think that some people would argue that, in the case of McFall versus Shimp didn't do anything that brought McFall into the world where they might die, right? McFall and Shimp's existences were never intertwined, whereas a mother who was not sexually assaulted has taken on some risk that then introduced the person, because we're still giving up that it's a person for this argument, into the world. And so is there a responsibility that's owed there? When they come out, we certainly seem to think that there's some responsibility that's owed, but
yeah,
I don't know. It muddies the waters a little bit, but it's a good foundation for a debate. On this ground, how much can we expect a mother to give up? I think it's a great argument, by the way, which I've never heard a great argument before this. I had not heard a great argument for, if we think it's like taking the life of an actual person, why would rape change things? I know it feels like it should change things, but what is the philosophical 1, 2, 3 that should change things? This is a great one, right? Is that in a case where it's not your choice that this other person exists, you have no responsibility to them. So I think that this finding is great for going, in the case of sexual assault, abortion needs to be available.
I agree,
I mean,
because it says if
hard.
it's non-consensual bodily intrusion, right? Your right to life after a non-consensual bodily intrusion is not the person's problem. It's not their responsibility. They get to stay the sanctity of the individual. It's all intact, and I do think that's important, especially because as we talked about last week, very few of the states that have those trigger laws that will come into effect, if this Roe v. Wade ruling, goes forward, they have trigger laws that will ban abortion outright, and only a few of them. Only like, what did I say? Out of the 15 I listed, there were only like 5 that made an exception for rape. So the number that do not care is fascinating.
Yep. So I think I think that is a great argument for there. And then I think the argument that spirals out of it is, where do we draw the line on the responsibility? If the fetus is a person, where do we draw the line on the responsibility of a parent to the child? Because, when you elect to keep your child, you do give up a certain amount of independence in order to keep the child after the child is out, right?
Yes.
But you also have the option to give the child up with no legal recourse. So correct. You can and we say that's fine. So I think there's a big question there. But there are laws that if you choose to have the child, right, or to keep the child in your custody, there are, if that child dies because of you, there's a number of different criminal charges that will be levied against you. And unless you're in Florida, you'll be charged. So,
well, I think that's an interesting one too, because California is trying to make a law that basically acknowledges that the first year of life is very fragile and babies sometimes die, and it's not your fault for a myriad of reasons. And you shouldn't be prosecuted for murder in those cases, because it seems like some people really want to go too far with some of this stuff. And they're saying, no, not only, if you miscarry or you have an abortion, not only will we not prosecute you for that, but if something happens after your baby is born within that first year, and it's clearly not negligence on your part or anything very obviously that you did, we're not going to prosecute you for that.
Yep.
So it's interesting. I don't know the nuances of the law and how it affects, because there's a case right now, where somebody miscarried after, they were a meth user. And so likely they miscarried because they were a meth user. And so they're being tried for murder. And would that apply in a case in what California is trying to do? If you are using meth and you have a miscarriage, I'm thinking it's okay there. But I don't know, man. It would be interesting. That's an interesting one.
It's Bracken Gossip.
Bracken! Man, we haven't seen Bracken in forever.
What's up, Bracken? Okay. We're talking about McFall versus Shimp. Do you want to read this one, Mom?
Yep. As someone who has had an abortion after being assaulted, I do have to admit, I feel like any pro-life arguments feel really invalid to me. And I have tried putting myself on the other side, but don't see it. Man, I agree with you. It's difficult because we are all in agreement, but we're also trying to respect the other side. I think to them, it's murder is murder. And I think I covered it with, one of the Texas congressmen who he wrote in his bill that there is no, relief if you are raped, because to him, why should one bad thing follow another bad thing? Yes, this terrible thing happened to you. That doesn't mean another, we should do another terrible thing by murdering a baby that was innocent. But again, that he's visiting his feelings about that on you. It's not okay to me, obviously. It's a hard one. Bracken might have interesting insights because he usually has an idea of what the other side's thinking and talking about. But maybe
it's impossible not to if you grew up in Utah. I do wonder that Texas person. So I've been reading a lot about the philosophy of this, because I think when it's impossible to get good arguments, just go to philosophers talking about the thing, because they go very 1-2. It's good stuff. So somebody proposed and I wish I could give credit to them. I just am quite bad with names. But somebody proposed a thought experiment with respect to abortion in the cases of assaults that I do wonder how that Texas congressman would feel, which was, imagine on some given night, you go out and you drink and you fall asleep outside. And when you wake up, you find yourself to be a human dialysis machine connected to the world's greatest violinist. And the question is, do you think that even though you never made the choice to be connected to the greatest violinist, so the point of the argument is that this individual that you're connected to is great. So again, we're steel manning the opposite side, because people love to say, oh, well, what if they had, well, I'm smaller now. What if they had,
I forgot.
what if they had cured? What if they had cured cancer? What if they? So the whole point of the experiment is, what if you're connected to somebody deeply great, but it's no fault of your own, right? It's just you got kidnapped, and now you are like the source of life for the world's greatest. Bracken knows. Bracken's out here, right? Yeah, you're the source of life. The violinist is now dependent on you for their life. Do you, despite never having made a mistake that brought you here, or like taken on a risk where you're like, well, some roll of the die, I might end up the life force of the world's greatest violinist. Do you have a responsibility to remain hooked up to that dialysis machine? And I think most people would go, fuck no.
Yeah. But why do I have to do that?
No, even though they're the greatest violinist, which, with respect to most of us, that violinist is giving a lot more back to the world than we are. So even then, most people go, no. I mean, that's the kind of thought experiment that brings you to that.
That's a weird one. I think for me, the struggle is, the difference between a man and a woman and having a womb, and how differently that makes us different. It makes us unequivocally different, that we are hosts for other human beings. And I think for some people, the idea that other human being exists sort of negates anything else, right? It's in your womb. Sorry, you are the host now, whether you want to be or not, because that person is a person to them. But being forced, to have your womb utilized against your will, it's terrible, especially in the cases of rape. You didn't do anything wrong. The argument about personal responsibility and keeping your legs closed was taken out of the scenario. You weren't doing anything. It wasn't your responsibility. You didn't. It's terrible. It is against your will. It is non-consensual. It is all of the things I don't like, all of these words. It is a bodily intrusion to the nth degree, but it's just, it's so difficult. It's so difficult because the real question is, when does life begin is an important question that I don't know that we can ever really answer, because it's not just a scientific question.
Yeah. I just want to insert some vocabulary, because now I know there's basically no pro-lifers in chat, or if they are there, they haven't spoken yet, but that we're opening ourselves up to a bad argument from the other side. So,
okay, what's the bad argument from my side?
So again, no. I'm just saying we're opening ourselves up to something that I'm going to get ahead of for posterity. Okay. Because I've been really trying to dive into this, and so I've been trying to read all of the best pro-life arguments. Spoiler, there's not a ton. The best ones are basically get somewhere to the, like, we don't know, therefore we should behave on the side of what is it, caution. But anyway, one of the big ones that abortion talking heads, that anti-abortion talking heads, which is to say the people that are making arguments for their own side, which, as I've gone over, is bad and dumb. What they'll say is it is a biological fact that the human organism becomes alive at conception. And here's the thing. That's true. That upon fertilization, that embryo is a living human organism that is separate from the mother. And it is alive, much like a cell is alive, right? or a microorganism is alive. So this is the problem, is that we open ourselves up to a semantic argument, which is stupid. But life is not necessarily what we're debating, because there's almost no humans on Earth that think that killing living things is inherently wrong, because most people use hand sanitizer. You got a real face going on right now. Okay, you were paused. You were
Oh.
you were stuck,
Oh,
and this is what you looked like.
Sorry. Here, I'll click this next time.
It's all good, but I was like, I'm really trying to put things.
Uh-oh. Did you freeze that time?
Living things, okay. But we're not killing persons, and that is I think what the question is when does a fetus attain personhood? This is like the cardinal question of how we debate this whole thing, because essentially the abortion debate breaks down to, if not a person, then can kill. If a person, no killing. That's what, if we're speaking straight philosophically, that is what it is. My sperm is no less alive than an embryo. Well, it's about half as alive if we're talking about DNA. But yeah, we all kill living things. When does it attain personhood is the question. But if you listen to pro-life talking heads, which I have a lot this week, and it's been great for my mental health, they will always say, no, I'm not arguing from a religious standpoint at all. It's a biological fact that it's alive. And I want to kick them in the teeth, because they're arguing a semantic argument. So when does it become a person? And the general philosophical...
So you're distinguishing between aliveness and personhood, right? Aliveness and personhood, yes. You're distinguishing those two things. Okay.
Because there's all sorts of alive things that we kill. And there's alive human organisms that we kill, sperm. And I have not seen a single person that is protesting outside of a porn studio because they're killing sperm. They might be protesting for other reasons, but because they're killing sperm, right? That would be weird. So we're cool killing human organisms. We are not cool killing persons. What makes things persons? And this is that whole thing is, what is capacity X that makes you think that something is a person? And so some people say future planning, but the thing that becomes real gray is there's a ton of shit that babies can't do. And there's something about a baby coming out that makes everyone not cool with punting the baby. Everyone's like, oh, it's out now, can't punt it. So it makes it very hard to argue philosophically, because we have two edges, right? We have, well, before it's an embryo, we're definitely cool with it. Everyone cool with it, but with no reasoning needed. It's just everyone agrees. And then on the other side, once the baby comes out, everyone's like, not cool with that. No philosophical reasoning, just a feeling. Just like, well, I'm not cool killing babies, and it's fully accepted. That makes it very hard to argue philosophically on these bounds, because we've set bounds, and now we're kind of regressively figuring out what capacity X is that makes something a person, because we've decided that babies are persons. No, unfortunately, we might arrive at, you should be able to punt babies, and I don't think a lot of people are going to be cool with that.
You think you should be able to punt babies?
Not what I'm saying.
I mean, you just said it, though.
No.
I'm just checking.
No, I'm saying that, oh my God. Depending on what capacity you say, alive as a functioning body, personhood would have some form of cognizance. This is what most people believe. I mean, not, religious people,
Exactly.
But
the functioning brain isn't necessarily even important.
When you ask someone the functioning brain, right?
Geez.
Or what is what they say. Just to make it easier.
Yeah. Eject.
I'm sure that there's a punchline. I'm sure there's a punchline to that. So you can carry them 5 at a time. That is vile. Oy. Thank you, Scotland. Like that.
Oh, that was dark.
That joke was brought to you by somebody with one hand.
Right, because you could carry 10 babies.
I could. Don't get me started on toes. I'm going to be shuffling around 20 babies.
I just want to tell, it is difficult because when you talk about biology, so like again, what is the truth? What is right? What is all of that? I think you've hit on the fact that it is X. We don't know what it is. It depends on your standpoint. And how do we bring somebody around our way of thinking? I don't know, especially because it is all about how you feel, really. I mean, some of it is definitely religious, but even religions don't agree. Even people in a single religion don't agree on it. We talked about that. That in the Jewish faith, that within the first so many days, the baby's just considered water, and after that, it is part of the woman. So for them, it's not until they breathe, some life. If you're Islamic, within the first 40 days, it's just part of the mother. After that, the spirit has been imbued in their mind, and so that would be, where it starts. It's different.
Yep.
And it is it's more philosophical than it is biological. It is more of your feelings and your morals than it is the science of the matter. Because how do you view it? Do you view it, is the living organism, or is it human? And if you think those are the same thing, how do I talk to you about it if they're the same? How do I move you if they're the same to you? Do you know?
I don't know. But the best, no, don't know. But the best way to argue it is to actually lay out the facts and recognize this is difficult, right? We can have an opinion and still recognize that these are big philosophical questions that people that couldn't graduate high school, I don't think that, they should be authorities on these questions. These are hard questions. When does a thing become a person? What is personhood? What is the capacity that determines personhood? Those are big questions. Those are big, hard questions. And when you at least argue from there and get out and recognize that there's difficulty and getting the question wrong on one side or the other, right? The stakes are murdering a person, bad, or enslaving a person to an unconscious entity, bad.
Also bad. Yes.
Those are high stakes. High stakes on a hella difficult philosophical question. So at the very least, just understand that when people are arguing, a lot of the times they are arguing because they chose a side and it makes them comfortable to not even think about the fact that it's a hard question. Yeah. And so maybe if just a couple more of us can just recognize that it is hard, then we could see how something like viability is an interesting metric to introduce, right? And you can go,
yes.
Well, the problem is enslaving the mother on one side. And if we agree that the problem is enslaving the mother on one side, then if we're able to improve artificial wombs, then that's a dub for making this problem less morally tenuous, right?
Why are we not doing that?
For the record, we are. And this technology has gotten significantly better, right? And so the age of viability has changed. Well, because time. And so, things take a second. And also, our politicians haven't done a whole lot about global warming. So a lot of mental capital has been dedicated to stopping global warming despite our institutions. So other things slow down when you propose a problem like that to all of the smartest people on the planet. But when we accept that one side is the problem here, then we can go, okay, well, what are the things? And what's crazy to me is that the Roe finding did this. And no one talks about it. That the Roe finding was not, it's fine all the time. The Roe finding was, there's a need to recognize that we are requesting something significant from the women who are gestating a child, right? And so we need to err on the side of caution of not enslaving someone's individual body to something that isn't even a person. So viability is a great index for making sure that we're erring on the side of caution with that. And they did that in the 70s. Back in the Stone Ages, they didn't even have electricity.
Listen, And to me, that's what's fascinating about it, having not actually seen how the case played out and how the evidence was given to them, that would be something that was part of their, conclusion. But Alito himself, that's what he has a problem with. He feels like that was arbitrary. Like, why in the world did they decide viability was such an important thing? Even though it seems like, well, because this is the only thing that we can agree on, right? We can agree on, at a minimum, viability means personhood is imminent, right? So,
well,
it is interesting.
and it means
the fact
that
Alito thinks that that's a garbage argument is freaking interesting to me. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. Bracken asks, could you speak on fallacies employed by pro-choice advocates? I think you did not see the beginning of the episode, because that was what I was railing on for 20 minutes. And I think it was making people uncomfortable. They're like, is this guy pro-life? No.
Well, no. I think he's talking about men not being able to have an opinion on the matter because they're men and don't have uteruses. I mean,
what does opine mean? I'm sorry. I actually don't know what opine means.
Opine is to have an opinion, to express your opinion, to opine.
Oh.
So, listen, this is my feeling about this, Bracken, and it's shut the fuck up. No, just kidding. No, it's a hard one because it's not happening to you. And I think until we get to a place where, artificial wombs are real, where we can remove an embryo from a woman and give it to you and let you have that burden, it's really difficult because it is part of a woman's body. I'm not saying that you can't have an opinion on it, but you really do have to defer to the women who have to go through it, because you come out the other end the same, right? You are, after you have sex, if there's a baby born or not, you are the same after it. If you are a woman, you are not the same. Your body is altered. You are a host to a parasite that becomes a person. And then the rest of your life is changed. Now, your rest of your life can be changed too if you are an active part of your baby's life. But that's still largely a choice on your part. It's less of a choice on a woman's part. So I think
all right.
That's my
play the alarms.
It's a hard
play the alarms.
Why did I play the alarms?
Play the alarms, everyone.
Am I wrong?
Wee woo, wee woo. Someone without a uterus is about to talk. Okay, so it's me. I'm the one that's about to talk. You actually sent me this argument earlier today, I think, which was, I sent you an argument saying that it was disingenuous. And it was this idea that, I actually think I'm actually the one that wants to force things less, because I'm not making I will roll my eyes at my mother all day. That I will. I actually am regulating people less because you cannot have an abortion and I can have an abortion. And again, think about how this sounds to someone that does think it's murder, right? Like, to say to somebody, well, if you don't want to kill babies, you cannot kill babies. Just let me keep killing babies is insane, dude. Are you joking?
So you're saying that
again,
because I have the ability to kill the baby and you don't. That puts me in an interesting situation. I got to think about this one, because he's talking about this being,
for the record, I have the ability to kill the baby again. It's just that it's illegal if I do it. But
many men force their partner to get the abortion. Sometimes it's not her that wants it. Sometimes it's the man that wants it. But ultimately, she's got to be the one that goes through it. But it's really hard. I would love to be at a point where it was an equal conversation that we could have with men. I just don't think that it is. I don't. I wish I did. I think that there will be a day when that comes, when it is much more equal with regard to that. But because it's not happening to you, it really hits differently. It's not just like at the end, we'll have a baby either way, whether it's mine or yours. It's like pregnancy. It's the pregnancy is the thing that happens. It's not just the baby. The pregnancy happens. All of the things that go with the pregnancy happen. So I'm not saying you don't get to have an opinion, but please, I mean, it is important to defer to the women around you on the matter as much as possible. Be respectful of the fact that it is happening to them and that this baby is part of them. It is part of a woman until it's not. So
get it. I mean, it's certainly conjoined to the woman until it's not. That we can agree on that. But that again, this is just a problem of no one thinking from the other person's perspective, right? From on the side of men that don't understand women saying, "Well, you don't get to have an opinion," is it just think about the violinist thing, right? And then think about the person deciding to disconnect themselves from the violinist. Think about somebody being like, "Well, you really ought to not have done that." You're like, "I'm connected to that. How about you come get connected to this fucking violinist? Suck my dick." Okay? No. You don't get to have an opinion. You didn't get kidnapped and connected to a violinist, right? Obviously, that's how you would feel.
You're not a dialysis machine. I'm a dialysis machine.
Exactly, right? And you would so feel like that, and it would feel insane when people started offering their opinions. And you're like, dude, you can't even get connected to a violinist. You don't need to worry about this, right? I understand that thinking. On the other hand, if you think it's murder, saying that, you can't murder, like it doesn't affect you whether or not I murder someone, is not an argument against like somebody having an opinion about murder, because I have a lot of rage at people that do things that I think are bad that don't literally affect me. I've never been raped. If you put a rapist in front of me, I'm going to kill them, right? And it doesn't affect me at all, literally, except that being in a world with murder and with murderers is that, like, that's not what we want in society. So you got both sides not listening to how the other person feels. If the other person legitimately thinks they're connected to a violinist and this other person legitimately thinks it's murder, of course they feel this way. So just recognize that it's hard. Ah!
I get it. And that's what I'd like to say is it's hard. It's hard. I think, and it's particularly difficult because the lawmakers are men, right? We do not have an equal number of women helping to make those decisions. And so because of that, it really feels like, as much as some of us might like to give you a voice, we feel like we can't right now because there's just a deep distrust of men who make laws. So I'm sorry. You know, and some of the arguments that I hear, because people are like, well, what are the things that men have to go through that women don't have to? And the answer is often, I'm going to give you a disingenuous argument. Okay, here it is.
Right.
It's the selective service. It's signing up for the draft. Women don't have to sign up for the draft. And while that feels like a real garbage argument, because it largely is a garbage argument, it's not a 100% garbage argument, because having been in the military, and while I was not drafted, I was in the military, I did not own my body. I had no autonomy while I was in the military. They controlled me, where I went, what I did, to a degree. They could not force me to get on birth control. They definitely encouraged it and gave me some talkings to when I was not. But there was a lot of things about my body, where it was in the world, what I was wearing, the length of my hair, everything that I had no more control over. None. And that was something that I relinquished when I enlisted, because for me it was a choice. But for men, if there's a draft, it would not be your choice. We should just outlaw the draft. We don't need a draft. But it is.
We should outlaw the draft, yeah. But it needs to stay around for posterity. Can you hit on why it's a disingenuous argument to compare selective service?
It just is, because it's not what we're talking about. We're talking about abortion. We're talking about a baby. We're talking about another person invading your body, so against your will. That's what we're talking about. I don't think the act of having sex isn't strictly about having babies. If it was, then we should really be limiting our sex all the way around, shouldn't we? There should be no more pleasure or joy or connecting with your partner around it. It's only for having babies. We know that's not going to happen. So I don't know. It feels disingenuous. It feels like a disrespectful argument to what it is like to become a mother and to be pregnant. And the idea that that just because you have to sign up for it, there hasn't been a draft in how many years? It's been a long time since there's been a draft. Where
it hasn't even been a full generation. Like it hasn't. There are people alive that were drafted. Like
You're
that,
correct.
we've made the military more. We've made. I know. So this is what is so crazy to me
60,
is that people think,
years?
dude,
60.
there have been long periods of time between wars, many different times where the selective. I don't think it's what we're talking about, and I think that's the fairest point. Is that we don't need to just to analogize out it because we can just have a legitimate conversation about abortion. But I mean, I think it is. It's completely wrong that something that is not your choice can take away your ability to use your body and can kill you, and is also straight up to kill you, can traumatize you for life, can completely change your. If you don't think being drafted into a war completely changes your life forever, you got another thing coming. I mean, I think it's a comparison, and just because we currently feel like people can't be drafted.
Right.
I mean, seriously, that people were feeling the ache like 3 months ago. People were like, is something about to happen? Because we are dangling on the precipice of a third world war right now. I don't think it's going to happen. And also saying there wouldn't be a draft, I don't agree. And also, I can find articles before Vietnam that said there will never be another draft. And so that shit does bug me a little. So now being in the military has become much more like appealing to the country in general. And so now we have a massive military budget. The issue is that if there's a third world war, America is going to be playing catch up for all of the European countries that stopped investing in their military. So I would stay just an inch away from a draft isn't going to happen, because I think a nuclear war is more likely. I think a nuclear war is more likely in the next 100 years than a draft. But I also think that a nuclear war is about a 1 in 4 chance. So.
Also, women are in the military now. We're not drafted, but we're in the military. They will take volunteers. They turn away way more people than they accept in the military right now. So they will just stop turning them away. Have you seen pro-life women dismissing pro-choice men's opinions, pro-life, for being men? Though I think it differs as the men are siding with them. I have not seen that, but that is interesting. Huh. Yeah, that's a weird one.
I mean, I think there's probably a correlation between pro-life women and not necessarily buying into this like you are gender so you can't talk type of argument, especially you are male so you can't talk. There might be a correlation between bodies of people, a confounding variable, but I too have not seen that. So
I also like Ashley saying men's bodies aren't the topic. That's why the opinion's relevant. It feels true. You know, like, do we get...
But babies' bodies... God, the opinion of the other side is that babies' bodies are the topic.
Babies' bodies. So it's not about the women. Women are immaterial.
No, it's about both. See, you're doing the same thing that I've been arguing against the whole time. It's disingenuous, Mom. It's disingenuous. The other side thinks that it's about both babies' bodies and the mother's body. And they think it's about the responsibility. And it's about,
that part I think you're right.
You're not steel manning, man. You're not steel manning. You're not seeing it from the opposite side.
I'm trying to validate their point of view. Okay, their point of view is that baby is a person and is very important. And I don't know. I'm having a hard time validating.
It's equally important as a baby, right?
But and it doesn't feel that way. It doesn't feel that way when you don't make exceptions for rape, right? Because again, that takes.
But you're getting a. If you're talking about the steel man, then let's talk about the case where somebody just made a mistake, right? Because we've already talked about the rape case, and we've brought up a great legal argument for why rape should be an exception. Absolutely. So let's just talk about abortion without deferring to the worst case in which somebody might want an abortion, because that's the one that's most friendly to our side. So let's do the one that's most friendly to the opposing side when we're arguing against the other side, which is just the case where somebody made a mistake, where they didn't use protection and they're not ready for a baby, right? We're talking about that case and getting an abortion then, right?
Okay. I don't know what to do with this because I don't feel it, and so and their argument feels so invalid to me that I don't know how to validate it.
How does it feel completely invalid? What evidence makes it completely invalid?
Okay, how about this? Here's my feeling. So because this is how it sounds in my ear when I hear people say, you should have closed your legs. You should have done all of these things. They talk about all of these ways that you should have been responsible before you got pregnant, right? And so now you're pregnant because of your irresponsibility. Okay, I got it. Here we go. Let me see if I can get there. Okay, we've just proven that we're an irresponsible person because we got ourselves pregnant. Should we trust this person with the whole baby to be responsible for?
No. They're going to say give it up for adoption. What are you talking? You're opening yourself up to the easiest counter arguments in the world.
I don't know. I can't get there because it feels ridiculous. I can't. You got to help me, Colin. Do you have the argument for me? Or are you just trying to help me?
The argument is only about personhood and about whether or not being a mother implicitly makes you more responsible for a separate entity than just a random other entity, right? And by the way, the fact that you have the power to highlight comments and I don't, introduces a little bit of bias here, okay? And I've been staying quiet because I'm a man and it's not my place to talk about what comments should be up. But
that's the equivalent of your eye roll. Boom!
No, that's fair. Hey, bro, I'll take my mom flipping me off for $500. I have no issue with it.
Okay, let's see. What's Bragan say? There are plenty of pro-life people who see rape and incest as valid exceptions. There are, but there's just not enough that are making the laws. To jump to those examples at every juncture is a reductionist and disservice to the overall discussion. Listen, that's what Colin is saying.
Mic drop,
but
bro.
Also, I think it's the one that I struggle with the most because it's the one that feels the most invalidating to the personhood of the woman. And it really, it's the one that I have the hardest time getting over.
I've never been passive aggressive in my life, Ashley. I am always completely and 100% aggressive. You got to get to know me because passive is not the word I'd use. That it does feel invalidating, but I'm asking for us to argue from the perspective of we're saying there's exceptions for rape, right? So We're just saying that. How do you then argue against an anti-abortion advocate?
You're saying personhood, but I don't know how to make that make sense, Colin. Spell it out.
Because it's hard.
Oh, thank God. Thank God the answer is because
it's
hard.
It's so hard. It's so hard.
I don't know
Which is
how.
Which is why saying that it's just invalid for dudes to be talking about it, or that it's just invalid the other side, I don't think that we even agree with that. I agree with it's invalid in cases of rape, which is why we should stop talking about it. Because I think the case is closed, dude. And people that don't make that exception, you make the very good, logical, philosophical argument, and if they don't accept it, they can fucking eat rocks. I don't care, right?
Okay. I gotta have a pause because a comment came in from elsewhere because for some reason Marlene has decided not to make herself a YouTube login. So Marlene says, do you think the laws would be drastically different if women were forced to continue to be pregnant, endanger their lives, wreck their bodies, but the father was forced to raise a child for the rest of their life? Do you think that the laws would be different? Boy, that's a thought experiment there. I don't. It's like,
I absolutely think that the laws would be different. I absolutely think that the laws would be different. Yes.
Yeah. I saw a cartoon once and it was like if men were the ones that had to carry the babies and it was like an ATM machine. It was like withdrawal, whatever. And then there was an abortion button on the ATM machine. So, this world was made for men and by men, and women are trying to get our equal footing in it. And it makes men who have always been in control feel uncomfortable. And it's like, I would like us, I don't want to shit on men all the time. I don't. I live with a wonderful man. I have 2 wonderful boys, right? So I am surrounded by men. I don't think all men are pieces of shit. But it's really it's am I living in a weird anomaly? Am I living in a great bubble? I'd like to think that that is not true. But who are these fucktards that make the laws for us all the time? How do we get them out of office so that the real people...
They're old people. Okay? New enemy. Stop making me the enemy. Old people. Okay? We fucked up with COVID policy. We should have let them die. God. These old clowns. These old fucking clowns that bought their house for a nickel and that collapsed the economy and that fucking shat CO2 and nitrous oxide into the air while they reaped the benefits and then took those benefits away from us. They're the enemy. And also give all women guns. Okay? Those are my opinions.
All women guns. Men can't have guns. Only women can have guns, according to Colin. And let's see what the world looks like. Also, more public bathrooms.
More public bathrooms. No cars in Manhattan. None. No cars. Just buses. Buses and trains, baby. That's what we're doing. Parking structures all up and down the Hudson River. You want to come into Manhattan, park in a parking structure, get on a train, and stop hitting pedestrians, you idiots.
Yeah, please don't hate pedestrians.
Stop hitting pedestrians. I have dented 2 hoods since I've moved here.
With your body? With your body?
Oh, no. No.
No, not with your
Both
body?
times I happened to have an implement to do something. So once I almost got hit while I was on my, I got hit while I was on my one wheel. I had a green light and they had a red turn left light and they turned left into me and I had a wrist guard and I slammed it on their hood and it felt so good. The other time I was walking across the street after parking my motorcycle and somebody wasn't looking and drove into me and stopped and I took my motorcycle helmet. No, I was walking across the street on the crosswalk and somebody turned right into me. And I took my motorcycle helmet and I slammed it on their hood. And then I ran away. I was like, oh my God. I got to get out of here. I promise, I just parked my motorcycle, but I don't live anywhere near here. Good times.
I appreciate that. I just don't know. I don't know if I've learned enough on how to really talk about this issue. I appreciate the thought, the idea of being able to meet them where they are and stop arguing from where it feels obvious to me. But, talk to them from where they're coming from. Like I appreciate that, but it is real difficult. It's real hard. And I appreciate you admitting that.
We might have admitted. So I've been wanting to talk about bad faith arguments and people arguing for themselves and this I loved The Daily Show. I ate The Daily Show when I was younger. It was so good at making Republicans look like giant idiots. And what helped was a lot of the time they were, right? But this became a whole style of creating content, which is just creating content that's for convincing people that already agree with you. And so I've wanted to talk about this for a while. And maybe, just maybe, abortion was like, throwing us into the deep end with respect to practicing honest intellectual discourse. But now that we've done it, think about what we can do about the gun debate. Let's go. Because that'll be so much easier than abortion. It's so much easier. There's so many more statistics. It's completely different, and it's so much easier. And we know my opinion.
I like it. I can't help but like Ashley, man, because I feel her so hard.
We all like it. We all like our bad faith art. That's the point.
That's the point, especially because most of us interact on social media now. And, like when you're arguing with somebody who you respect in real life or in real life, you might be more willing to listen to an opinion that is different than yours because you have some respect for that person. When you talk to people on the internet, they are strangers. You have no respect for them. They have not established themselves as an expert in anything. So they're all idiots to you. And you have no reason to listen or to argue in good faith with them. You just have no reason. And so I think that's the real challenge in how we all end up in echo chambers. And we are, we're one here as well, but we try to do better in our minds.
This one doesn't count. This doesn't count. Here's the thing, right? I love watching Jordan Klepper go to the fucking Trump rally and have the people at the Trump rally say dumb stuff. It's so funny to me. I love it too. It's so funny because look at these clowns. But if you're watching this and you're thinking that that's the best that the other side has to offer, you're kidding yourself. Okay, this content is so good, and keep enjoying it, right? But just know that it's the fucking Lay's potato chip of content. Okay, it's junk food. It's garbage. What? It's not. It's not real. Jordan Klepper going to these fucking Trump rallies, right? And these gotcha journalists going up to the young people on the Hollywood Strip and asking them about Roe versus Wade, and some lady who's drunk off her ass, who's 21 and enjoying spring break, goes, "Oh, is that the fight?" Some dumb. It's fun. It's entertaining, but it's not. It's junk food content. So just if you're getting your opinions from that, then try it. Just don't. Just enjoy it, but don't let yourself think that this is everything that the other side has to offer, because there's so many dumb liberals. There's so many. Honestly, it's amazing how many dumb liberals there are in smart places. I have spent the last 6 years of my life in two of the smartest places on the planet. They're all fucking idiots, okay? Because they're doing the same thing. They're consuming the same content and they're saying the same dumb bullshit, and they're not thinking. And so we can be made fool of just as easily. The good news is that we got all the comedians, okay? So it's become a little harder to make us look bad because none of the people that are on their side went to improv classes. But let me tell you, the second that one does, we're done for, okay? So just work on yourself a little bit. Just work.
Yeah, we got to do better. And we have to also realize that not all people on the conservative side of the spectrum are idiots. There are some of them that are smart, that are over there pulling the strings, that have they have carefully crafted the words that they're saying to get the dummies to say it, because those people vote and they know how to influence people. They know what they're doing. Not everybody over there is an idiot. They just have an agenda that is different than what it looks like, in my opinion.
Yep.
In my opinion, because there's got to be an end game here. And I don't think the end game is we love unborn fetuses. I don't think that's the end game. I think that is a tool in a bigger arsenal, as you know, because I have this thing against the evangelicals, and I think that they're doing some shit that I haven't quite unraveled yet. So,
Oh, Ashley, welcome to the podcast. I'm glad that you're here, and at least you didn't say what about, but yeah,
she did it.
That's the podcast.
She's a rock star. She gets it. She knows she can give you shit because you've given her plenty. So.
Me? Anyway. Yeah, that's the end of the podcast.
I think we're beating a dead horse now. Yep.
We're beating a dead horse. It's we'll be talking about this plenty more. I'm gonna go play Dungeons and Dragons.
Do a little investigating on McFall versus Shimp if you guys want to figure out some interesting arguments that you think might help that are not abortion related, but that sort of hit the same thing about your bodily autonomy, people not being entitled to you just because it will save their lives. It's interesting. And thank you for keeping us company. If you have not subscribed yet, please subscribe. Also, liking the video is nice. It makes me feel good.
Thank you.
All right. You want to sing? Should we sing it out?
Yep.
Okay. We love you. Let's see if we can do this. Bleep.